This is Inside Voices with Kristen Messerly, where we talk about housing and finance issues from a variety of perspectives. This month is Women's History Month, and I am so excited to be interviewing Yanely, who specializes in NextGen Personal Finance and has an incredible voice on YouTube and Instagram. Her page is at Miss Be Helpful, so definitely check that out. Yanely, thank you so much for taking some time to chat.
I'm so happy to join. Women's History Month is such a special time to highlight women, so I'm glad you chose to have me on.
Yeah. So for those who don't know you, can you share a little bit of your backstory and just what makes you passionate about personal financial education, especially for the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career as a classroom teacher. So I was an elementary school teacher in New York City, where I was born and raised. And I absolutely loved teaching. It was so much fun, especially younger kids, third and fourth grade. It just feels like they're just so curious and so eager to learn, and ready to like please the teacher and like do everything to kind of make you proud of them, which is really great. But I was really struggling myself with my personal finances because I'm first generation American. I'm a daughter of immigrants. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. And so we grew up in a very traditional household. They pretty much were cash only for everything. And my parents never really had bank accounts or debit cards or credit cards or anything like that. And so we never talked about money. And when it was time for me to go off to college, I remember like my parents being like, okay, sweetie, you better go and get some scholarships because we don't have any money to give you to pay for college tuition. And, you know, being that we're low income, I did qualify for a lot of grants, and I did qualify for, you know, Pell and a lot of like different programs that did cover a lot of it. But there was still so much that I didn't know about the cost of college and like, you know, how to fill out your FAFSA and how to get additional scholarship dollars. And long story short, I got really lucky and I got a full scholarship to Brown University because they had a special program for low income students. And there was just a pot of money that was meant for some of the neediest families to be able to graduate without student loan debt. So I was in that program. Shout out to the Sidney Frank Scholarship Program at Brown. It was a great experience. And what that meant is that I kind of like dodged the whole student loan experience because I never really had to take on student loans, and I never had to compare interest rates or understand like what it means to take on loans like that. So when I got to college, I wanted to have a laptop and like I wanted to have name brand clothes and shoes, and I wanted to get Starbucks and go to the movies with my friends. And so I got my first credit card when I was in college, and that was my first entry point into the world of personal finance. I didn't know what it even meant to use a credit card. Like I had no idea. And yet I was like swiping my little credit card up and down campus, buying everything. And it got out of control. Like really quickly, I went from, you know, $1,500 to $20,000 by the time I graduated. And I didn't have anybody to explain to me, you know, how the compounding interest works and how it was, you know, really growing and kind of getting out of control. So I held on to that secret. And when I graduated and once I became a teacher, I realized like, this doesn't make sense. My paycheck is not enough to pay all my bills, help out my family, get transportation to and from my job, pay for lunch, and also pay off these credit cards. So that was when I picked up a book about money. And that was my real kind of education, was the self-education, learning about money myself through reading books. And then later I decided, you know what? I love teaching, but I think I want to teach specifically about financial literacy because it's something that I never got myself when I was in school.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. It's interesting. You did Teach for America starting out, right?
Yes,
yeah, I did
did.
AmeriCorps when I was first starting out of college, and ended up working in homeless shelters and primarily the immigrant community doing like housing education and health education. And then I became a social worker, and it was amazing. And I was really passionate about bringing education into those communities. But then I had zero money, you know, so that's what made me I was like so broke and just barely making ends meet. And so I started a bunch of side gigs, like a translation company and a lot of different things that like that. And that's what made me really passionate about like, how can we make education about everything from personal finance to, you know, starting a business to buying a home, more accessible? Like it's just, yeah, so I think it changes the game for
Yeah.
everyone when you have that education.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate that right now it's still not technically part of our formal education system in most states. The way education works in our country is very highly localized. So it's not like the president can just wave a magic wand and say like, okay, all the states have to do this, because that's not how education works. It's not a federal issue. It's a state issue. So the only way we can make sure every single student in the country is getting access to financial literacy in school is for each state to have 50 individual different bills that turn into laws that require their specific state to teach it. So that's kind of the work that I'm doing now. I shifted over from just kind of general education and teaching to financial literacy advocacy. And so NGPF is actually where I'm at now. NextGen Personal Finance is a nonprofit that focuses on financial education by offering teachers curriculum materials, training teachers, because it's one thing to be excited to teach it, but if you never learned it yourself, there might be gaps in your understanding of some of these financial concepts. So we teach the teachers and train them, and then also the advocacy resources. So putting out data and putting out a toolkit so that schools know what they need to do if they want to get this class required in their state. So that's been just amazing. Like, it's very meaningful work, and it's clearly like mission driven, but also the fact that we can see the impact that it's making like almost immediately is just, it's a breath of fresh air.
That's amazing. My little sister in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program said the other day, she was like, you're going to teach me about this kind of stuff, right? And it's funny because it hadn't hit me. Like, I knew, of course, I'm going to teach you about this stuff. But then I realized, like, I've spent a lot of my career focused on this, but I don't know where to start, and so I was actually just putting together a program after that with a couple people to provide education to some of our local high schools, like the one she goes to, and a friend of mine. So I'll have to check out your company, because that would be, if you have the kind of curriculum, like that's what we're looking for.
I will totally hook you up. We got lessons, activities, games. We got everything you need.
Oh, I love that. That's great. So was there a pivotal moment in your life or career? Like, sounds like, your life was kind of leading to this, but was there a specific moment when you thought, this is really what inspired me to get into personal financial education? Or was it kind of your own personal journey that brought you there?
I think it was a combination of my personal journey and then the observations that I was making in the workplace, because when you're in college and in high school, like, a lot of that is just like you're around your peers and everybody's the same age and the same mentality, and everybody's just kind of spending money and everybody's broke. So you don't really talk much about like financial responsibilities, because you're kind of putting that off until you're officially an adult, like after you graduate and after you have to start kind of dealing with this stuff. But when you do enter the workforce and you get your first job, like, that's when you can no longer delay and ignore like these issues, because now you have a paycheck coming in and you're no longer a student. So you're a full grown adult now. It's not cute to say, oh, I'm so broke. Like, it's no longer like just a normal thing, because it's normal for students, but not for like working professionals. So the societal pressure shifts dramatically when you're no longer a college student. And so I felt that pressure when I was teaching. There was a teacher down the hall from me who was constantly talking about like the retirement accounts that she had, the 403B, and then she had this other, another account that she had set up. And so I remember the day where we all had to fill out our benefits paperwork. It was early on in my teaching career. It was like my first year teaching. And the HR person came in and like gave us all these packets and was like, okay, the first packet is like your medical coverage and your dental coverage. And the second packet is your retirement plan. It's a 403B plan, and we offer a small match, and like just presented all of these things as if everyone just knew what that stuff meant. And I was just literally like, she is just speaking a foreign language. Like, I literally was like, what is a match? What is a 403B? Like, what is she talking about? And so my instinct was like, I'm just going to ignore this packet because I don't know what it means. Right. And, but luckily the teacher that I was co-teaching with that year, she immediately started filling out her paperwork. So I was probably like 23, fresh out of college, and she was probably like 33. So she immediately just started filling out the paperwork and everything. And I just saw her doing that with such confidence. I was like, so I like kind of just like looked over at what she was writing. and I copied everything she wrote on her paperwork. I had no idea what it meant. I remember seeing things like moderately aggressive growth fund, and she wrote 7% in terms of like the contribution. So I just remember what I wrote. Like I wrote 7%, and I circled the little bubble for moderately aggressive growth, and I didn't know what any of that meant. But now that I'm like educated in the world of finance, I think back, I'm like, wow, how lucky was I that at 23 years old, I started investing in a 403b retirement investment plan, putting 7% of my salary pre-tax into this account, and investing in one of the funds that they offer, which is moderately aggressive, which means it's got some stocks in there and a little bit of bonds. I didn't know that at the time, but now that I know that, I'm like, wow, I was so lucky that that happened, that I kind of like cheated off of her paper and filled out that paperwork that way. But later on, as I got a little older, I changed jobs. I started working at a different nonprofit, and people would come to me and they'd be like, oh, Yanely, like, you're like you're on the team kind of financial expert. Like, can you tell me, what do I do with my old 401k from my old job? Like, should I roll it into our new plan here? Should I put it in an IRA? Should I cash it out? And I was like, oh my gosh, don't cash it out. Like, that's a really bad idea. And so I would educate people on my team who were above me. Like this was senior leadership. These are my superiors. But they knew, because of my YouTube channel and my Instagram, and they saw like that I was posting financial literacy content. They knew that I knew about this stuff, and they would come to me. So that was kind of like the light bulb went off in my mind of like, if this is the leadership that I am under, like I literally report to these people and they don't know this, they're coming to me for this. That means that there's some sort of, authority or knowledge or, credibility that I have that I can share. So I kind of was like brave enough in that moment to like step into that and really start doing workshops and online events and charging people ticket sales to come and learn this stuff, because why not? Like I read dozens of books about this stuff. I knew it really well, like the back of my hand. Like it was time for me to now kind of, pay it forth and give it to others. Mm-hmm. So that was really when I knew I needed to kind of pivot to financial education, was just when enough people started to come to me, and I was like, okay. But I got really lucky because NGPF found me. They saw my YouTube videos and they saw me posting social media content, and they emailed me and asked me to be a podcast guest on their show, which goes out to tens of thousands of teachers. And then that led to a conversation about, hey, would you want to work with us? And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that I could. And so I got really lucky, and it led me to kind of join the team there, and where I'm now officially kind of working on financial education and financial advocacy.
That's amazing. Yeah. I feel like, you kind of stumble into this in our world. And so I felt the same way in terms of just being really lucky that I happened to be in the right place at the right time to like start doing this kind of thing. But, well, I love what you're doing. I also noticed that you feature a lot of women on your channel, and we're releasing our NextGen Women's Homebuyer Report this month, and found that there was a huge disparity when it came to men and women, millennial and Gen Z age, when it came to their education and overall access to financial advice and support. So there's still, you expect that, I think, of women that are older coming from a different time, but there's still a huge disparity in the younger age range as well. Do you have any thoughts on how we continue to, mitigate that and do a better job of equalizing financial outcomes for women?
Yeah, I think that the trickiest thing is just the fact that women are not funded equally, right? Like it just, when we think about money, the number one generator of wealth is usually investing, whether that's in the stock market, in real estate, or in yourself by creating a business and investing in that business. So entrepreneurship. So when we look at entrepreneurship, for example, there really aren't very many female entrepreneurs who are getting the kind of funding in the venture capital world that makes waves and allows you to kind of grow a multi-million-dollar business. So, or billion-dollar business, multi-billion-dollar business. So I think that there needs to be access to capital for female entrepreneurs, and in particular women of color, because those are the kind of the women who get the least funding when you look at the VC space. Mm-hmm. And also in general, not just entrepreneurship where people are creating these, businesses that have never had a blueprint for how they should run before. That's, what true entrepreneurship looks like. You're kind of building the ship while you're steering it, but also just women-owned businesses in general. Like there could be a lot more grant programs and access to loans and things specifically for women-owned businesses, because the reality is, even if you have a small business, you're creating jobs and you're creating value in your community, and that needs an investment so that women can kind of have these opportunities and access to capital and access to appreciating assets like businesses. I think that that's the key thing. Women oftentimes, we're more risk aware. So when we're aware that there's a lot of risk involved in something, we're a lot more skeptical to kind of take steps in that direction. There's so much risk involved in entrepreneurship. There's so much risk involved in opening a business and running that business rather than kind of taking the 9-to-5 traditional job route. And so it's something that when you look at the numbers is a lot more male dominated. And so the way to kind of even that playing field is really to provide more access, I think, to funding and to capital for women specifically. But then I think the second thing too is that even when you look at the traditional workspace, when you look at the 9-to-5 jobs, I mean, I've worked 9-to-5 jobs all my life and kind of had my business on the side. But what I find is that the number one disruption for women who are on the intense like career trajectory path to success, becoming, leaders, executive directors, or being C-suite execs, right? Those women on those trajectories, the biggest disruptor for them is usually motherhood. When they choose to become a mom, that puts a dent in their ability to continue on that career trajectory path because they have to take time away from work. And I think that the biggest thing in the space is really just looking for two things to happen. One is expanding access to affordable childcare, because the reality is you cannot, you can't keep up financially if childcare isn't something that's affordable and available to you. I mean, my own mom, for example, she was not able to work consistently because her and my dad have 9 children. I'm one of 9, which is wild. Like, we have such a big family. But growing up, my mom had to think about it. There was a cost benefit analysis. Like, okay, I could go work. In my mom's case, she was probably going to make minimum wage because, as an immigrant with little to no education, little to no English, there were certain jobs available to her. And so get minimum wage, which wouldn't even cover childcare for 1 or 2 kids, let alone 9 kids, or stay at home, let her husband be the breadwinner. And then she could do all of the childcare, taking us to and from school, after school pickup, soccer practice, all that stuff. So I see my mom and I kind of think it was impossible for her to be able to have equal access to wealth building opportunities or even just a paycheck. So I think affordable childcare is huge, but then also paid parental leave. In the US, we are the only developed nation that doesn't have an official law in place protecting paid parental leave. And it's wild to me because women are such a huge part of the workforce. And it's not like we choose to be the humans that carry babies. It just happened to be that women are the child carrying, humans. So I think in that case, we need to really think about what is fair and what's equitable in the workspace, and providing women the opportunity to pause to do that, but then come back and continue on that trajectory to a successful career path.
I love that. Yeah. That's so important. And I think so many times we focus on the very obvious in front of us, being like, you need more education or whatever, but there's a lot of structures in place that need to be supported before even thinking about education, really. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always think of it this way. I think of it as like regulation and education are kind of like on a seesaw for me. Like they have that up and down relationship, right? So if you have a lot of regulation, you can get away with less education being provided because there's so much regulation in place to help to provide protection, right? But when education is really, really high, you can kind of get away with a little bit less regulation because now there's an educated consumer base and people understand what's out there and the risks and predatory things that are out there, et cetera. But right now we have low regulation and low education. It's not, that doesn't make sense. So something's got to give. Either we need to start really pushing on education, financial education for all, or we need to really push the regulation piece with expanded affordable childcare laws and also laws protecting paid parental leave and things like that. Yeah,
totally agree. That's so important. Well, my last question for you is just, as someone who does educate the next generation, what do you think that educators and leaders need to understand about the younger generation?
So I work a lot with high school students and sometimes even college students. And I think the number one piece that we notice it's a major shift in for the younger generation is the mobile first nature of their generation. They're mobile natives. They were literally born with iPads and iPhones in their hands or in front of their faces. And so I think that is something that we just have to embrace. We have to stop trying to push back against it or fight against it and say, oh, they need to get off their phones. They're so easily distracted. Like, we need to stop challenging the idea and just accept it as a fact that they are digital natives and that that's their go-to. So if there's a 18-year-old out there who's trying to, make a financial decision in their life, and they're confused about what to decide, they're not going to call their mom, their dad, their friend, their mentor and ask. They're going to look it up online, and chances are they're going to look for it on YouTube or TikTok. So it's really important that we embrace that and really lean into the technology piece to reach them, putting more financial education resources online, making sure that, companies are providing plenty of educational resources in addition to whatever services and products they're offering in the financial space, really holding companies accountable. Like, are you doing enough, right? Like, if you have a budgeting app that people pay for, what else do you offer for free that's educating people about budgeting, right? Because I think that that's a really critical component for people who just otherwise wouldn't be able to access things that cost money. And then I think the other piece is really the fact that they're the generation, especially Gen Z, that puts people before profits in a lot of ways and is very value driven. So I honestly have heard teenagers say, I will pay more for something if it aligns with my values, even though I know that it's hurting my budget and my finances. I will feel better paying, even if it's twice as much money, because I know that that company isn't funding issues that I'm against, or that they are in support of issues that I care about. So we really need to just accept that again and really pay attention to what are the values of the next generation and how can we align to those values and best support them and prepare them for the financial future that they're facing, which is this new 21st century financial world that most of us we're not really familiar with because we didn't grow up in that world and we didn't have to navigate it ourselves.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing so much with me. This has been really interesting and I absolutely love the work that you're doing. Is there anything that I can be doing to support you other than telling everyone go to @MissBeHelpful, follow her, her channel is amazing. But yeah, anything else that we can be doing?
Thank you. I appreciate that. The only other thing I would say is we actually have a bill tracker. If you just Google NGPF bill tracker, you can actually see all of the active bills that are being proposed right now to require financial literacy in schools in all of the different states that they've popped up in. I think there's over 25, 27 states right now that have a bill proposed for financial education. And there's like over 60 bills right now. So, and this is early 2023 that we're speaking. So I think if you're in a state that has a bill, first of all, be aware that there's a bill being proposed in your state, and you could pick up the phone and call your representatives, local representatives, your senators, and, ask them, hey, are you in support, or what are you doing to promote this financial education bill? Because the reality is, unless we take matters into our own hands, sometimes the lawmakers aren't aware that their constituency really cares about this. So we need to make them aware by emailing them, tweeting at them, tagging them on LinkedIn, posting things, and sending to their inbox and calling them and leaving voicemails and doing everything we can to let them know we care about this. There's a bill right now. Vote yes on that bill. The opportunity that you get to vote yes. And just to really champion these kind of bills so they can be signed into law so that more students get financial literacy in the school system before they graduate and not, have to learn through the school of hard knocks like you and I had to learn.
Yeah. Okay. That's so helpful. I think so many of us, want this to happen, but we don't actually know what to do to support it. So
that's right.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Well, thanks again, Yanely. It was really great chatting with you, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.